I just want to say good evening and welcome to tonight's Kaleidoscope event. Kaleidoscope is a series to foster openness, curiosity, and dialogue about issues and concerns, or art and different ways of thinking, in our community, country, and this world. My name's Briana Sitler. I'm the Director of Special Programs at Bay Path College, and I want to express my appreciation to People's Bank for underwriting the Kaleidoscope series and their commitment to providing cultural and educational enrichment to the communities we both serve. If you're a student, I will stamp your passport at the end of the event. If you are coming for dorm credit, sign in on one of the sheets in the back. I'm going to ask everybody to turn their phones to silent or vibe so we don't get interrupted. If you need bathrooms, they're through the double doors here, through the next set of double doors, and to the right. Feel free to ask questions when Susan is painting. That's part of what she does. So if you can't see, find a seat where you can see better. With that, I'd like to introduce Susan Tilton Pecora. She was raised in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and in the seashore community, she grew to appreciate the beauty and quality of light and the intrinsic beauty of New England. After furthering her studies in Boston, she moved to Western Mass in '74 and studied painting with Jack Flynn here at Bay Path College. When Mr. Flynn retired, she taught at Bay Path for the next 10 years. She's exhibited and won awards from a variety of national organizations, including the American Artists Professional League, New York City, New York, Knickerbocker Artists, New York, New England Watercolor Society, North American Open Exhibit, and the Copley Society Invitational, and more. Susan's paintings are included in permanent collections of Western New England College, the United States Post Office, Bay State Medical Center, Northeast Utilities, and many more locations. I'm not going to go into all of it. She's currently Bay Path's visiting artist here on campus. She's been here since Sunday, and she has an open studio that anybody is welcome to go and visit. It is over in our Blake Student Commons. You walk in those doors, you'll see she's got an open studio hours posted. She's usually there from 8:30, 10 to 4, 10 to 7.
10 to 4.
I mean, it's one of those things. You just look, but you're more than welcome to join her and paint or watch her paint. The students have been enjoying it very much this past week. She's here through Saturday. And again, if you have any questions during her painting, please feel free. With that, I welcome Susan.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to jump right in and get started here. And I'll explain my process as I do it. Some of you guys have studied with me, so you know the process already. I've got my water. I've got my paints. I talked a little bit about this palette. It's called the Possum palette, and you can get it online. And I love it because you can put lots of watercolor paint in the individual cups and then close them so they don't go running all over the place. I'm using Rembrandt paint and Arches, is this? Yep, Arches paper, and it's 140-pound paper. And I'm going to start. I was going to do an autumn scene, and I don't know, I just couldn't bring myself to go into autumn quite yet. So this is spring in Somers, Connecticut. And it's a magnolia tree. I think it's a tulip magnolia tree. And when I find a subject matter I like, I just sort of trespass all over the place. I was in somebody's side yard in Somers, Connecticut. I have no idea who they are, but they had a really fantastic tree, so I'm going to paint it. And a little bit of their house. And I'm going to start with, this will take all the pressure off of exactly where the petals on the tree are going to be. All right. And I've got try to hide my roll of toilet paper. I've got tissue paper. But really, it's just a roll of paper that I have out here that I take the center out of so I can pull the paper out as I need it. And can you guys see if I'm painting like this? Okay. You guys in the cheap seats are okay? Yeah. All right. And I'm going to try and leave a little bit of the white of the paper because the tree it's a little too orangey. I'll add a little more pink. And right now I'm using Opera, which is my new favorite pink color, and a little bit of Naples yellow. And see, by spraying the paper ahead of time, it softens up the paint. And I'll go right in front of this. There. And on oh, the other thing I was going to talk about a little. Well, we'll get some of the petals, and I'm not exactly doing petal shapes. I'm sort of doing clusters and trying to keep the edges interesting, just by using the point of the brush. Okay, and throw on a little paint here. There. Okay. And I've already done this in my sketchbook. I work out all of my paintings in a sketchbook ahead of time, unless I'm painting on location, which I did some of that this day, but not in this person's side yard. I went to the Phelps Hathaway house and painted on location. Actually, I like what that did. I think I'll do a little more of that. Just splatter in some water. Breaks up some of the pinks. Because magnolia trees have pink and white in their blossoms. All right. Another way I could do this is by throwing salt on, but if I threw salt on, it would take hours to dry. There. And there's nothing like sitting around watching paint dry, so I'll do it this way and leave the salt off. Okay. But I worked this out. This is the photograph that I took. Can you see? On the top, and then this is the study I did on the bottom. And I got it pretty far along, and this is just regular crummy, I think this is a Canson sketchbook. And I sketch things out in it, and if I don't like it, they don't get any further than that. But actually, I think I did like this picture, so well, maybe not. Somewhere in here there she is. This is Screaming Mimi. She was born in my yard this summer, and she did nothing from the day she was born until the day she finally flew away, but just yell from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Apparently that's what hawks do, but I get some good pictures of her. So anyway, I liked this picture, so that's why I decided to do it. I brightened it up a lot from the photograph. And, okay, that took up a little bit of time, so the magnolia tree, tulip magnolia, had a little time to dry. And this is still wet up here, so I'm not going to put the sky in yet. I think I'll come down here and put in the walls of the house. Wherever I want the paint to go, I want this wall. I erased the wall. Okay. It's right there on the picture. Okay, they're going to get an addition. Because the top of the wall was here, but the bottom of the wall was down here. But now I've decided to just have the top and the bottom line up. So they just got an addition to their house. You can do this if you're not doing a commission. If you're doing a commission, you kind of have to keep to the lay of the house, but nobody will know. All right. And I'm just putting in the water wherever I want the paint to flow. I'm going around the columns. I can go through the door. And then I think I'll use the same color. I'll go in with the pink color. And never worry too much about drips at this phase of the picture because everything's so light. All right. And post, post, post. There we go. And then over here, go right through this. All right, and there's the top of the house. There. And then I'm going to go in with cobalt blue. I'm shadowing my colors. There. There. And just let the two colors combine. More cobalt blue. So this is opera, which is really, really washed out, and cobalt blue. And I'm going to go around the railing. And that's still too wet up there. I do have a hairdryer that I can use if it's not drying fast enough. And see, it's going to keep following that one little channel. All right. This phase of the painting, I don't get really too fussy. Okay, and this is post, post, and oh, I get it. This is the edge of the house here, and this is the edge of the house here, and this is a post that's, I guess, holding up this top part. Okay, so I haven't changed their house around too much. And then I'm going to go down. The other thing I liked about this was that the magnolia tree had just started to fall down. So a lot of it was down here in the foreground, on the ground. There. So I've still got all this pink on my canvas. I'll come splatter this. This also gets all over my forehead, so when you talk to me later, if I have pink dots all over me, it's not a disease. It's just opera. Okay. I find I have to really dilute this a lot. This is a really gaudy color. Okay. Anybody ever used, how many people paint here? Oh, good. Okay. Anybody use opera? All right. So you know how gaudy it is. I used to use permanent rose. Then for a while I used rose madder genuine, and then this is my new favorite pink color. All right, and we'll spray it. And we'll do this just to drive the cameraman crazy. I turn, sorry, I didn't warn you about that. I like to turn my paintings so that the paint will go in the direction I want it to. I do this a lot for clouds. Okay, and this is connecting the dots. We'll splatter some more on here. Oh, no, getting it on my face, too. I should just learn to wear the colors that I'm painting with, because I end up wearing them anyway. Okay. This is a new brush, so it's really springy. Usually they get a little bit more worn out, and I don't get them bouncing back on me. All right, now I'll turn it back this way. And let's see, I like how it kind of combines in here. Okay. Now I'm going to get a lot darker. Now, I'll go through, yep, I'm going to go through all the railings, really just quickly. And then over here we've got bushes. All right, so now I've got to wait for this to dry, and maybe I'll hit it with a hairdryer. Yeah. So I can put the sky in up here. Come on. All right. Yeah. Now, switch to a little bit bigger brush and more water. And go around the neighbor's house, around here, and a little bit of cerulean blue. And I'm going to put the cerulean blue right into the opera again. So there. And it'll just follow where the water is. And see, this will pop out the post on the house, pop out the house across the street. There. And, okay. And come right down here, and right over here. And switch to round brush again. Where'd that go? Here it is. Any questions?
Is that a cold pressed paper?
Yes, it's 140-pound cold-pressed arches. I like arches, and I like Canson again. Canson makes a paper that I really like. That's smooth on one side and rough on the other. And there. And rough on the other. And I like that because you can, pick and choose. I can take it with me if I'm on location, because certain things I like hot pressed paper for, and certain things I like cold pressed paper. Usually I use cold pressed paper all the time, but I liked having the choice. And I actually used to use their smooth side a lot more often than I use Arch's hot pressed paper. I'm going around hanging plants here. That's what these things are. Okay, so the house is starting to pop out a little bit. And
okay, for those of us who don't know the difference between hot and cold press, how does that change the paper?
hot pressed is very smooth, and you could do pen and ink drawings on it, and it doesn't have any texture at all. This is actually the smoother side of Arch's cold pressed, but cold pressed has a little bit of bumps. I don't know if you've looked at a watercolor up close, but you can see the texture on them. All right. And we'll go through the railings again a little bit, although,
Susan, does it follow that as far as the amateurs are concerned here?
Yes.
A 140-pound paper is probably the heaviest that's made.
No, 300 pound.
300?
300 pound. And in really good economies, I used to use 300 pound for half sheets all the time. In not so good economies, all of a sudden 140 pound is just fine. And the 300 pound doesn't buckle at all. This buckles a little bit, but it always flattens out. And I tend, when I'm on location, I tend to take 140 pound with me just because, you put a pack of paper in the car and it's just heavy. So I tend to always have 140 pound with me. And when I'm on location, I always do a full sheet painting because if you give yourself enough space, you might end up with a painting this big, but at least you've got enough space, to the sides and the top and the bottom so that if you do like it, you can move things around. You don't have to do so much measuring. But a lot of times I'll end up liking the whole painting and, I'll be surprised if I go to frame it and think, oh, geez, I used 140 pound again. So I use 140 pound a lot and have no complaints about it. Okay, so we've got the house in a little bit and, okay, mess around with this. And now, let's see, I'll start to put in some of the background bushes. I'm going to use ultramarine. I'm shading my own colors here. Ultramarine and a little bit of cadmium yellow. And mix that together. And I just keep mixing it. Mix it on the palette. And then back to the spray. Okay. I'll try the spray bottle right there. There. And my light source is coming kind of this way. So sort of right overhead. So I'm going to fudge it a little bit and have it come this way so I can throw some shadows going to the left. So I'll stay light there. And I don't want two big blobs of the same color green. So let's see. We'll shoot for cerulean. I might not like this. Cerulean and cadmium. See what that cadmium yellow. See what this gives me. Nah, I don't like that. Don't even want to put it on there. Okay. Back to this. This is my never-ending roll of tissue paper. Okay, if I go into Prussian, that's what I'll do. It's a stream of consciousness, by the way. I really like to prepare better and paint something that I've painted 1,000 times, but I never, ever, ever, ever do that. The only time I've ever painted this was last night in my book. I just like to paint whatever interests me that day. So I liked this last night, and I asked the students that were painting with me today, and they all chose this. Okay. So I ended up with, I'm going to put a little burnt sienna in this. Okay, that's a little too much burnt sienna. Now I ended up with burnt sienna and Hooker's green there. And as you can see, I've been doing some oil paintings lately with two friends of mine that are professional oil painters, and I sound like all my students. I complain, I whine, I say, how do you make that color? How do you do this? How do you do that? And then I realize, oh, geez, this is what my students are always asking me, and it seems so simple in watercolor. But oils are just so difficult. Let's see, I'm mixing everything right on the painting. And what they're always saying to me is, mix every color you see in that bush on your palette, and then put it, and it just, I like the I'm realizing I like the spontaneity of watercolor a lot. I like the way oil paintings look, the outcome, but okay, I don't want that. That's too bright. That's kind of from this green. But these are completely different bushes that they had there. They're not quite as healthy as the bushes I'm putting in right now, but that's okay. And I was tempted to make these into rhododendrons, but I thought, no, if the magnolia tree's in bloom, then the rhododendrons aren't going to be in bloom yet. So these are just random. This might actually be a rhododendron bush, but it'd be too early for it to bloom. And to give it a little more texture, I'll spray it. There. Okay. Now, this is still a little wet, but I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to put Naples yellow. It's another color that's kind of new to my palette that I like. And just soften up some of the background over here. And And I'm using a round brush. What number are you? Number 10. Okay, how far back do I want to go? All right. The house starts here and then jumps over to here. So if I want, I can just suggest background bushes all the way to here. Oh wait, nope, that was going to be my building. Okay, we'll leave that and I'll get rid of that later. Okay, so house is going to go to here. Don't you love it when I make mistakes? Oh yeah, not to worry. Unless, of course, I'm your doctor, but that's why I'm not a doctor. Okay, I'll come down here and just pop out these posts. How am I doing for filming? Are you getting a lot of the back of my head? Oh, good. Okay. All right. And I'm going to bring this up here, over here. I think I'll switch to a bigger brush. And a little more pigment and not so much water. When I want it to get darker, I don't like that color. When I want it to get darker, I've got so much water on the painting right now. Okay, ultramarine, cadmium yellow, there. I'll start to get there. More paint and less water. I'll pop this house out. And then the porch ends here. And I just suggest a porch across the street. And then leave that, jump over here. And come down here. All right, I'm not going to go into the side of the house. All right. Now, I'm getting sick of hearing myself talk about greens. Here. And I don't want to overwork this area too much, so I'm going to jump over here. If I put the tree in, can I still put the shadows in? Yep. Okay. So I'm going to go to burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine again. I tend to use just about 7 colors. And first, the ultramarine will darken up the burnt sienna, but first I'll just put on a wash of burnt sienna and water. And this must be a really old magnolia tree because the trunk on this thing was huge. And maybe a little bit of raw umber up here. And more water. This is just going to be the first layer. I don't really worry too much about the first layer of my paintings. I get darker and darker and build them up as I go along. Okay, so at this phase I can still change things. And I don't want to go in, I don't want to have the tree in front of all of the blossoms. So I kind of put the tree in places and then skip there. Have some blossoms in front of the tree. And over here. All right, I'm not going to scratch any of this out because I'm going to put another layer on. Oh, and we have yet another bush. Okay, well, I've still got green. Let's see. I'll put this guy in over here. And then back to the steps. I don't want to use this. I'll use a brush. I like these flat brushes. They're just squared off 1/2-inch brushes. Use a lot of these. And instead of having to paint in every little corner, I can just go like this and make the steps. Here. And I do lots of architecture, so I tend to buy these brushes by the case. All right, perfect. And then I'm going to get rid of all of the yellowy green that I've been using for the bushes and jump over here and put in a window. Okay. And I'm always cleaning off my palette. I can't tell you enough how important that is. so I can work with the white of the palette and really see the colors on the palette before I put them on here. Okay, there's Naples yellow. And do Naples yellow. Come on. And once again, I'm using, I think I'll put it right through here. I'm using that 1/2-inch brush. Caught it right before it was going to drip. There. So it'll go up the side of this post, just like that, and over here. And I like having warm light. This is in deep shadow. And then there's a little bit of the window on this side of the post. Okay. And then this one up here. I asked Jerry's for some cards so I could give them out to the students if they wanted to know where to get good art supplies. And basically I'm using them to buck up this side of my easel. Okay, while I'm at it, I'll put this color in this window too up here.
Do you use a lot of Naples yellow?
Yes.
That's supposed to be very opaque, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of like opera. Let me show you. Opera isn't opaque, but opera is pretty obnoxious, you know. And then, you know, you go, oh, geez, I got to get rid of it. And it's just there. And Naples yellow, by the same token, I figured opera we can always put more flower petals down here anyway. Naples yellow is sort of like the cerulean blue of yellows. Where do we want some Naples yellow? Here. We'll put it in here. See how opaque it is. And this is odd Naples yellow. I ran out of my regular Rembrandt brand, so I bought some at an art supply store in East Hampton, and it's made with honey. And it's kind of viscous. I haven't tasted it, but when you thin it out, here, I'll just keep thinning it. See how transparent? So if you use a lot of water, it thins out and it's very nice and transparent. Having said that, it is a good time to blot this because this particular brand, that's better, isn't as transparent when I have to wet it. I have to wash it down a lot. But I love the color. I love using it. And when you do want a light opaque color, if you've gotten too dark somewhere, you can just kind of pop it in. And I like the warmth of it. My old favorite was raw sienna. I was always using raw sienna everywhere, and now I hear myself talking about it all the time, and I'm always using Naples yellow. And the opera down here might be a little problem. Just keep in mind this is a demo, so I never worry too much about, I want them to, obviously, to look okay, but I like demonstrating, so I never worry too much about what I'm doing to it. There. And we'll turn it sideways again. I'm giving you warning. See if we can calm down the opera. Okay, we'll just let that go. And maybe I might be able to spatter in a little bit of, just let them fight it out. Spatter in a little bit of the Naples yellow. I've also I grabbed a little bit of Pro White, which is opaque watercolor that comes in a jar. And I put some out here. And the only reason I used it was actually to sort of calm down the Naples yellow, because this Naples yellow is a little more orangey than Rembrandt or Winsor Newton. There. And we'll spray this again. But see, even the opera, you can just water it down. I say to my students, just think of water as your white paint. And if you get, well, that's okay. We can have green there. If you get too dark somewhere, just water it down, and you can kind of get rid of it. There. And we'll turn it back this way. And there. This poor old easel. I was doing a painting demonstration in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, and I borrowed an easel from a friend of mine. And it was a brand new easel, and I grabbed it out of her garage in Avon because I said, I forgot my easel, I'm taking yours. It was brand new. And I went to set it up in Old Saybrook, and this end immediately collapsed, and this thing kept falling forward, which is why I don't buy a new easel, because even the new ones seem to they're just cantankerous inventions. I've never met one that didn't have problems. So this thing's about 20 years old. But it's kind of like Willie Nelson's guitar. Have you guys seen Willie Nelson's guitar? It's the equivalent. Okay, so this is starting to sort of look like a house, buildings. Another thing I like to do, I just went on a run to Jerry's to get art supplies. So this is a brand new oil painter's brush there. And I like to kind of scrub out and move the paint around with these things. This one's smaller than what I'd normally use for this, but I don't want to spend all night looking for brushes, so I'll just use this little one here. And soften that up, soften this up. Okay. Now, I've got to kind of rein myself in. Let's see. What do we see here? Not much, just background. Okay. I've got to rein myself in and start getting a little tighter with the architecture. Okay, so we'll go in between here. And here I'm just going by the photograph. I would have thought that you saw another railing or something on the other side of this, but I can see right through this railing to the green beyond. So the green beyond. So I'll put that in. And it pops out the railing. And then this one. Oh, all the time on my drawings, not when I'm painting. Oh, yes. In fact, I was doing another painting demonstration in Provincetown, and a little girl came up to me and she said, I'm an artist and I really want to be an artist. And she was however old you are when you're about this tall. And she said, but I have one problem. I really can't draw a straight line. And I usually always have a triangle with me. And I whipped out my triangle, and usually they're hot pink because you can't see them when they're clear. So I buy hot pink ones, and I said, this is how you draw a straight line. And I held up, I said, you don't use this part of it. You line. And tonight I was putting in lines before you guys got here, and I was using this. I said, you match this up with the top of your paper, and then you go down like this. So that's how I did, believe it or not, that's how I did this. And when I paint it, I can't paint a straight line, but theoretically the drawing is usually pretty fussy. And when I'm not doing a painting demo, if I wanted to finish this and be really tight about it, I'd lay it flat. Oh, and another thing that I love, I'll show you. This helps a lot. And we'll use the kaleidoscope brochure. These are watercolor pencils. And you can come in here. And I usually always buy the same colors. This is ultramarine. I tend to buy earth colors and dark blue colors. And if I wanted this to be really straight, I'll go over the painting at the end using watercolor brushes. And see, I can get a straight line with that. And
what brand do you like on the pencils?
I've got Rembrandt again. I've got a lot of Rembrandt stuff. And this is, what are you? Derwent. Rembrandts are, I'm not sure they're called Rembrandt. I think they probably are. Rembrandts are harder, so you get a harder edge. Derwent are softer. So it depends, I guess, on what you like. You get a softer edge with these, and they kind of just melt in. Now, this isn't watercolor pencil anymore. This is ultramarine paint. Okay, I didn't paint the trim. That's good. And we'll go through here. And let's see, while I'm at it. But I do use watercolor pencils and a ruler when I want to get a real straight edge. We'll give them a little screen door. And see, once again, I'm not really exactly painting a straight line here either. This will just disappear into the tree. And actually, what's that do? Oh, yeah, that is pretty dark. Okay, we'll darken up the whole thing. And I can darken this up. I'm using ultramarine a lot to darken up over the Naples yellow. Come over here, and this will pop the tree out. And painting is constantly adjusting. I actually like to point out when the painting looks particularly putrid, which is right about now, because this is where I lose students. They'll look at it and go, it just looks terrible. I can't finish this. And, I make an analogy to baking a cake. You can't pull the cake out of the oven a half an hour too soon. It's not going to look like a cake or taste like a cake. You've got to work through the awkwardness of your painting. One way I get around it is I'll work on 2 or 3 different paintings at the same time. So when I get sick of one, or like this is all pretty wet right now, so I go and work on something else that was totally a different type of a painting. So I'll work on like the painting of Screaming Mimi, the noisy hawk, and work on an architectural piece, or work on an ocean scene. Okay, is this dry? Yeah, before I go and re-wet this, I think we're going to go in and put in the shadow of the house and maybe a few more magnolia bushes. But I've got all this Naples yellow here, and if I wet it down enough, I can go in here, and this was really warm, the reflected light under the porch. Okay, I'm going to, and then really dark on the top. Warm on the bottom and darker on the top. Okay. And then, never did fix this, but we'll do something with that. Another thing, when you mess up something like that, usually I always tell my students to just leave it and don't worry about it, and don't try to, when it's wet, don't try to beat it up, because you'll just like push it right into your painting. If you let it dry, the paint's still sitting on the top of the paper, and I can probably wipe that out. But in the meantime, I might think about putting another window there or something. I don't think I will put another window there, but don't panic. Just leave it and go to something else. All right, now I'm going to grab a little bit of sky color, which was cerulean, and come and patch this in here. Okay. Go right up to that big green blob. What do I want to do with this? I'll just pull this down. Okay. And this is just a supporting pole, because the top of the house was here and the bottom of the house was back here. Okay, and that's what I'm assuming this was, because it was much thinner than the posts. Okay, so we've got that in. That's, if I try to put in the dark shadow right now, that'll be too wet. So I'll jump over here and go into ultramarine, but I want to wet it. I want to, wet it up a little bit. And there's a shadow that starts, let's see, how wet is this? Okay. Over here and goes, and it gets thinner as it comes over here, and then thicker again as it comes back over here. I think the house bent right about here, and I'll try to go around some of the magnolia tree. And then this is all in deep shadow. Okay. How am I doing on time? Anybody sleeping yet? Good? Okay. All right, so this came across like this, and then this straightened out. All right. And then I'm going to get a razor blade. I also use credit cards, but my favorite thing is old, rusty, single-edge razor blades. And mix up burnt sienna and ultramarine, which will give me a nice dark. Do I want to use this brush? Yeah, I guess. Okay. Come in here and skirt around that, because that's probably still wet. Come over here, put this in. Actually, I don't really care if that's still wet. I'm going to scratch it out anyway. And we've already got the underpainting on here. And I always have to do this upside down. I'm not quite sure why. I always want to be pushing the paint this way. And I'm left-handed. So I'm using almost the whole razor blade and kind of lifting it and pushing it. Yeah, if I get a stripe like that there, just cut into it. Wipe off the excess. Here. There we go. And then back into, dry this off a little bit, and then back into burnt sienna, ultramarine, and there's some dappled shadows here. over here. All right. And then switch. I was using the house brush. I'm going to switch to a thinner brush. This is called a script brush. Either a script brush or a rigger. This one's probably a script brush. Comes to a round point at the end, but it's like an inch long, so carries lots of paint on it. Come down here and there. And I can get these fine little lines. That's what I liked about this tree. This tree just went everywhere. That one, I'm going to use a little bit thicker one. There. Any questions so far? No, huh? Okay.
I have two. Where's
Good.
Jerry's?
Jerry's is in West Hartford.
Okay.
You've never been to Jerry's?
Well, I don't paint.
Oh, okay. Well, then you probably won't like it that much.
I might go with somebody that does paint.
Okay.
And what are your 7 most used colors?
Burnt sienna, ultramarine. You want me to go slow? Are you writing them down? Burnt sienna, ultramarine, cerulean blue, cadmium red, Naples yellow. How many is that?
That's 6.
Okay, raw sienna, raw umber, and cobalt and Prussian. Okay, so I'm not so good at math. However many that is. That's funny. I might have stolen that 7 color thing from. I paint with one of the oil painters I paint with has 7 oil painting colors that he uses, and I complained about that when I was doing oil painting too. You paint without burnt sienna? How can you live without burnt sienna? All right, now I'm going to get all of this, and it turns out you can make burnt sienna with cadmium red and cobalt blue and yellow, but who wants to? Life's too short. Okay, I'm going to clean out all of this and kind of stand back. All right, it's coming along.
What about alizarin? Don't you use that?
Not very much.
Really?
You know, I have it. Alizarin, and I don't use alizarin crimson. I use brown madder. But I don't really even use brown madder very much. It was in Jack's palette 30 years ago, so I got rid of Payne's Gray because I never ever used Payne's Gray. And I thought,
Black.
no, never used black.
How about an oil? With oil?
No, that's a good question. Not generally.
I love black.
In oil?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna try opera here and see how I like opera for these hanging baskets. This is a little scary. Okay. And I chickened out and put Pro White. I do like Pro White. And I noticed when I used to enter these exhibits, I haven't entered very many exhibits in years. You know, once you've done, you know, and spent all that money on Salmagundi Club and, you know, all those things, I've got to write a new biography. I'm getting sick of listening to that one. But once you've done all those shows, it's a lot of money, and the only people that go to them are the people that got rejected and the people that got in. You know, nobody else is there. And I forget what the point of my story was. Anybody got the point of my story? Oh, I know. I remember. They used to say, we'll accept your painting, but if we see one speck of white on your painting when we get it in, you're out of the show. And I used to think, what? Yes, now you can have any kind of water media. But it did seem very strange to me. If it looks good, who cares? But they just used to have this thing about white paint. So this is Pro White, comes in a jar. I really like it a lot. Seeing it, it's saved.
You can't find that everywhere either.
Jerry's. I bought like 4 of them at Jerry's just last week. Pro White.
It's got a big P on it. Pro.
Yeah, big giant P. As opposed to amateur white. I don't know.
And it takes color. Oh, if you white out something, you can paint over it quite nice.
Here, let's see. We'll take.
It's different than just
Here, this is it. I'm spattering it now. Now it's going to look like it snowed down here. Okay. And then we'll spray it. But this is Pro White. There. Okay. And it is really good for snow. Okay. And let's see. Olive green. Whoops, now I've got Pro White. Now it's going to turn out all my paint white. It kind of turns all your paint to gouache. Okay. I'll get this one. And a little bit of this. Okay. I'll put some more.
Is Pro White like gouache?
It is like gouache, but it has a lot of paint in it. I think it was for commercial artists or...
It's for blocking out negatives, right? Normally.
I never knew what it was for. I knew it was something to do with commercial art.
What? Can you take it off?
Can you take it off?
The advantage over gesso I found, Sue, is you can paint over it and it takes paint pretty good.
Gesso, yes. Gesso,
Gesso
you can't wipe away. Pro White, you can always wipe it away because it's just like watercolor. It doesn't dry like an acrylic. So from that standpoint, I always liked it. I can get rid of it down here if I want to. Okay, now I'm going to go into Prussian blue. This is going to be scary. Okay, and a little bit of yellow. Nope, I want a little more Prussian blue. They had a dark green trim down in the bottom here. Boy, this whole thing, I keep hearing myself saying, and then this is dark green, and this is dark green. There. And once again, I'm using that flat brush. There. I can hear you.
We're talking about you.
That was Rudy, right?
I'm always talking about Sue.
I know, Rudy's been amazingly quiet tonight, actually. Oh, it's disconcerting when you're that quiet, Rudy. Oh, let's see. I'll flatten this out again. I want this a little bit wider. And I'm waiting for this to dry. Okay. And is this dry? Oh, once in a while, I'll actually look at the reference. Oh, now I've got to get rid of all this color. It's funny, when I took over Jack's class. You weren't in that class, were you? No, you weren't in the class when I took over Jack's class. But when I took over Jack Flynn's class at Bay Path, the students, he was deaf. He was profoundly deaf. So the students would just talk out loud about him. And they would talk out loud about me. And I would always have to say, I can hear you. Don't say anything bad. At least not until I've left the room. And they never did say anything bad, so it was actually okay. But it was just so weird to hear people say, did she come to you? She didn't come to me yet. Is she gone? What color did she use? Oh. I think he's still painting.
Jack's still alive?
Yeah, I tried to Google him. He didn't get with the computer age. He wasn't Googleable. But I do a painting demonstration for the Blandford Fair every year, and they said that he had inquired about coming back this year and teaching another workshop. So, yeah, isn't that amazing? God bless him.
Is he still in touch with John Wiley?
I don't know.
Great friends.
I haven't seen or talked to John Wiley in years.
Oh, he's good.
And he was still in touch with Joan Barita, but Joan Barita moved to California. Okay, now we're doing pink shadows on the posts, and then we're going to do blue shadows on the posts. There. And I'll have to do shadows in here. Okay. There. And like I said, I'm going to have my light coming from the right. And going down here, around this, and then shadow from the bushes. Oh, good.
What are you using for paint there?
This was the Opera and Ultramarine. Okay, and the flat brush again. See, and this is why I wanted the darks in the background, so that the post would eventually pop out. And I'm going to put you back in here. Okay. And Oh, I've got more posts here. And this little white post can get... Now I'm just going to hear... This is another thing that Jack used to say, is darker, darker, darker. Now I'm going to adjust everything and make everything darker so the house starts to pop out. There. And get rid of the flat brush and go over to a round brush. Maybe I'll put... well, no. I'm doing spring. I was going to say maybe I'll put a touch of autumn. Well, actually, spring has Naples yellow in it, too. Okay. There goes the easel. The Jerry's cards aren't holding it up. Come on, baby. Stay up here. Okay. And this is where I always worry about losing people. Now, especially when I'm painting architecture, I'm just kind of restating everything over and over again. These are the shadows in between the railing. And you just kind of pop them out and back up. Okay. Let's see. I can put... I was talking. The railing actually comes up here and goes like that, which you guys can't see. And I painted over it. How do I want to do this? Do I want to get that dark? Oh, sure, why not? Okay. I'm using ultramarine. And I'm going to go there. Through the window, around this, there. And back to the round brush. I want this bigger round brush. And have some of the shadow shapes mimic the leaves on the magnolia tree. Okay, come down in between here and over here and then up here. And go in between these two posts and then get really dark over here. And back to this. And if the color starts to get picked up a little bit of the Naples yellow, so I'm going to go back in here and get more blue. Keep it a little more vibrant. And back over here. And then go into the opera. But the opera I'm going to water down a lot. There. And just let it drip. And that's another thing with watercolor. I don't like to mix the colors over and over. There's a lot of opera on there. Okay. I just like them to kind of just drip into each other. There. Okay. And back to the round brush. If I want it to get lighter, this brush has got something on it. It's turning everything brown. There. Okay. And then down here, guess what we've got? More shadows. All right. I'll let this dry. Come down here, kind of put these in again. And then in here, this is all really dark. I'm going to put shadows in it. I have hearing like a mother. That's why they used to make me so nervous when they'd talk. Okay, you're going to keep coming down here. And this could get darker. Okay. I'll put this over here. And shadows are going to be coming from this and this. Oh, and that house across the street. We're going to go across the street. And just because after a while I get sick of hearing myself saying ultramarine blue and opera. Okay. Come down here.
Makes an interesting lavender.
And doesn't it?
It's very lively.
Yeah. And then this needs... Was there actually dental molding? No. Yeah, oh, yes, there is dental molding. I mean, this, I could go on and on. Here, I'm going to grab this. And I think I could put shadows in here and little lines in here. And then,
Is the name opera strictly Rembrandt?
no, actually, opera, quinacridone, thank you, pink, is one of the colors. And opera, I think opera might be Winsor Newton. Does anybody know? I think I've never bought Holbein,
That's
so
a Windsor Newton.
it might be. Yeah, it might be.
Mine is Windsor Newton.
Yes. So,
Do you
and-
find that it's not as staining as rose madder?
Good question. I was surprised because I thought it was going to be staining, and I don't find it staining. I find it a lot more vibrant than rose madder. And what scared me about rose madder was one of my students brought me a book about the. Let's see. Once I'm painting, I have brain freeze once in a while about the permanence of the pigments, and Rose Madder Genuine had a permanence level of 0, and I thought, well, why did they even make it? And I did for a while. I did a little foray into egg tempera painting, and I bought a color. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically the same color. It was hot pink, and in powdered form. And I noticed in my paintings a year or two later that that color faded terribly. And egg tempera is supposed to be very permanent. And a friend of mine looked it up on her. She had a phone, one of those square phones that you can look stuff up on. Technologically not advanced. And she said, "Oh, egg tempera is the most permanent medium of all of the painting mediums, except for whatever this color was. It was something rose, and that color was a completely fugitive color." So then I switched to opera, which had a better level, and quinacridone, which is supposed to be, it's probably all chemicals, but it's supposed to be permanent. Okay, so now let's see. It's starting to look like a house. It's starting to look like a tree. That's good. I'm not going to take this too much further. What time is it? Where are we? Okay. How long am I supposed to paint?
If it was a talk, I'd say 8 o'clock is when we'd end, but you can paint and
All right.
we'll just stay.
Well, nobody's falling asleep yet. All right. Well, this is getting there. It's not fully evolved. So let's see, but we're close. Give me another 10 minutes so I can finish what you gonna do in the bottom part. Yes.
I have a question. You're doing an absolutely magnificent job, like usual.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed your show.
Because I have to say, from up close, it just looks like bleh.
But how many times do you paint the same scene? Do you do it just once in your
Good.
sketchbook, once here, and then you're done? Or do you do another?
Good question. Well, with Screaming Mimi, I painted her in my sketchbook, and then I did her in watercolor with her mouth open, and now I'm doing her in oil with her mouth closed. And I think that'll be it for Screaming Mimi. Some places, kind of like the haystacks, Monet's haystacks. There's an old mill that I had a studio in at the end of my street. I've been painting that old mill for 30 years. And for some reason, every time I drive by and I see the light hitting it, it's like, oh, I have to paint that again. And, it's getting to the point where I'm thinking, okay, this is getting redundant. And Provincetown. I loved Provincetown for 30 years. I showed there. And now I drive up and down the streets and I'm thinking, okay, I'm kind of done with Provincetown for a while. So it depends. You don't paint, do you? Oh, that's interesting. You ask evocative questions. But I do go back to the same subject matter, but I won't use the same photograph and do that over and over again. Oh, and that's another thing about photographs. Yes, I use photographs. You can see how dark this is. I'm not exactly copying this, but somebody said recently, well, isn't that cheating? And I thought, you know what? If Vermeer and Rembrandt and Michelangelo had cameras, they would have used photographs. They used everything they had at their disposal. yes, I go out and I paint on location, and I do complete paintings that I never change anything on, that I've done completely on location. But I also use photographs. I have an opaque projector that an illustrator left, and if I don't want to do a really complicated drawing, I just project it, and and that's tracing. But and that's the whole theory with Vermeer. Somebody was writing about camera obscura, or however you say that. Okay, we're going to get down to this part. But artists use whatever artists want to use. That's why it's art. There's no right or wrong.
And it's your photograph.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah, you can't.
You've taken a picture, so it's yours.
Exactly. And you should use your own. In fact, when that artist that did the Obama poster, I think he was a graffiti artist before he, found fortune and fame. But he was being interviewed on NPR, and they asked him where he got the inspiration for the picture of Obama, and he said, "Oh, I took it off an AP." And they knew right there. I thought, "Oh, you're in big trouble, kid," which kind of shows how innocent he really was. And the next thing he knew, the Associated Press was suing him for the millions of dollars that he made on the Obama poster. But you should use your own, your own images. Although artists copy artists, I was just reading about, now, who was it? French artist. And they were all copying Manet, and they were copying Manet's Sower because they loved that so much. So, you can take off on a theme and do your own version of it. Okay, let's see. The shadows in the picture are just all over the place. I want my light to look like it's coming this way, so I'm going to mess up the cameraman. I'll try to smile at the camera and paint this way. And here, I'm just going to throw on some shadows. There were shadows across here. When I did the TV show, to keep me looking at the camera, the third year I did it, my cameraman came in and said, "Okay, we're going to put your palette on the right." And I said, "But Keith, I'm left-handed." And he said, "Yeah, I know that, but it's going to make you keep looking over here." So I kept having to paint like this. So I said to him tonight, I said, "Just anything you want me to do, not a problem." Okay, and this is just throwing this across here, throw more light across there. And I could finish this, but what you'd watch me do for the next hour is put the dental molding in here and clean up these lines like I showed you with the watercolor pencil. Do things like this, I've got a curve and a shadow here, so I put the curve and the shadow. I mean, there's 10 of these, so I like to pick out complicated subject matter to do painting demos because I think it's interesting, and I can jump around and do a lot of things. But it doesn't really make for a completely finished painting. But once you see how it's done, I figure you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. But I do more of that, maybe come in here. Might even decide at some point, I'm looking at it, if I want to get this darker and I want these posts to pop out. Sometimes one trick I'll do is I'll put, and I probably wouldn't do it with this brush, I'll put the siding on the house. So the siding will go in between the posts and just kind of suggest it. It's just another way of adding some texture to it. But basically, and I finished the neighbor's house for them. But I'm going to dry this. This is my other new trick, and you guys can do this too. Not the hair dryer.
That's a nice little hair dryer.
Yeah, Ocean State Job Lot, $5. My new store. It is, and it folds up, so it's really teeny, and it's strong. Okay, in this economy, Rudy, you'll appreciate this. This is my new thing to do. I remember watching George Shedd, who was a painter whose work I loved, do a painting demo for the Springfield Art League about 20 years ago. And not only did he bring a mat to put his watercolor in when he finished it, but he also brought a gold leaf frame. So he put it in the mat, then he put it in the gold leaf frame, then he showed it to everybody. But in this economy, we can't afford gold leaf frames, and we can't even afford mats anymore. So this is, but I can still afford masking tape. And I'm kidding, really. I'm doing fine. but there. I like this because it just gives a nice clean edge. All right. And the trick is to pull the masking tape down so that you don't rip up into the picture. There. And actually, if you guys are into selling your own work or doing fairs and stuff, you can put these right into shrink wrap without putting a mat on it. Here, put it up there. There. See, it's got a nice clean mat around it, so you kind of get a nice edge. All right, come on up and look at it. Oh, thank you. Well, it's not finished, but it's getting there. And it does have the feel of spring. I'm just not quite ready for winter after last year.
I have a question
Yes.
about your paper. Do you stretch your paper?
No, never. You know how much pressure that would put on you to do a good painting if you wet it in the bathtub and then squeegeed it out and taped it down and waited 2 days for it to dry? I mean, you'd have to do a masterpiece on it. I could never figure that out. And see, this is 140-pound paper. It didn't really buckle very much, and I beat it up a lot, and I never ever stretch it. And I don't like taking all the sizing off because between scrubbing things out and moving things around, I like the more sizing it has, the more I like it because it gives me more of a surface to play with. So you can come up and look up close if you want, or thank you. Isn't that neat? It really makes it look nice.